I've come across a lot of health advice online. Some of it sounds convincing, but could be completely wrong. There are health influencers online claiming that high LDL levels do not increase the risk for heart attacks. Public figures saying that beef tallow is good for you. People taping their mouths shut to sleep better. And cable news cannot agree if Ozempic causes cancer.
There's a study that says this. Oh my God, there's a study.
I'm a practicing cardiologist and I'll be going over some of these claims. We'll see what's actually correct, what's misleading, and what could just be dangerous. So let's take a look at the first video.
There is no correlation between elevated levels of LDL cholesterol on its own and cardiovascular disease. You had to have corresponding increases in triglyceride. You had to have inflammatory factors. You usually had to have other metabolic factors like hypertriglyceridemia, hyperinsulinemia. And yet everybody, would really come after me for that. And now we're starting to see that the data on statins is really falling apart. Big data is starting to tell us that the extension of life is near zero, but the extension of all-cause mortality is near zero. And then the complications downstream, which we never study. I mean, you'll never find a randomized clinical trial looking at more than one pharmaceutical compound in the same biome. Yet almost everybody at the age of 60 is on 5 or more prescriptions. So what's happening?
So the claim is that there's no correlation between elevated LDL by itself and heart disease. Now, this is blatantly false. Every cardiologist, lipidologist, even primary care doctors know that elevated LDL is a strong independent risk factor for heart attacks and strokes. This European cardiology statement from 2017, which looked at numerous studies and data, tells us that LDL independently increases the risk for heart attacks. We see similar findings from the studies in the US. We see a 5 times increased risk of heart attacks in individuals whose LDL is greater than 190 compared to individuals whose LDL is less than 130. His second claim was that you have to have a corresponding increase in triglyceride, insulin, and inflammatory markers to have heart attacks. This is also incorrect. Systemic inflammation, insulin resistance, these are independent risk factors for heart attacks. What about elevated triglyceride levels? The data behind elevated triglyceride levels is a bit more debatable and controversial. The point is that if your triglyceride levels are normal, your insulin levels are normal, you do not have systemic inflammation, elevated LDL by itself will still increase your risk of heart attacks and strokes. And this is one of the basic things that we learn in cardiology. There's a genetic condition called familial hypercholesterolemia, which causes an isolated elevation in LDL cholesterol and LDL cholesterol only. Your triglycerides, your inflammation, your insulin, all that stuff remains untouched. These patients develop premature heart disease, premature heart attacks in their 20s or their 30s. And depending on the type of mutation they have with this disorder, their LDL cholesterol can be greater than 400. So this clearly refutes his claim that an isolated elevation of LDL cholesterol does not increase your risk for heart attacks. It does. Now, his third claim is that the data behind statins is not very strong and statins don't increase lifespan or anything like that. Now, this is also incorrect. This, unfortunately, is a widely held belief among statin skeptics. Statin medications have shown and proven to reduce the risk of heart attacks by 1/3. So imagine this. There's a room full of 1,000 people that don't take statin medications. Over the next 4 years, 25 of them will have a heart attack. Now, if those 1,000 people had taken a statin medication every day, instead of 25 people, 17 people would have heart attacks. So statins prevented 8 heart attacks in those 1,000 people. What about people that already have heart disease? We have robust data behind this. This was one of the first statin trials that demonstrated statin medications increasing lifespan in people that have heart disease, that have blocked heart artery disease. This study from the 90s showed that people that were taking simvastatin had a 30% reduction in mortality. That means they were 30% less likely to die compared to someone who was not taking a statin medication. So this guy doesn't know what he's talking about and he's clearly misleading the public. I also came across these 2 other videos about RFK Jr. talking about seed oils and beef tallow. So let's take a look.
I thought it'd be great to just kind of look at some of these items because parents are encountering these food items in grocery stores everywhere. Maybe we could just start right here with seed oils. We're hearing a lot about seed oils. Why should people be worried about these kind of products?
Seed oils are one of the most unhealthy ingredients that we have in foods. And seed oils The reason they're in the foods is because they're heavily subsidized. They're very, very cheap, but they are associated with all kinds of very, very serious illnesses, including body-wide inflammation.
Right.
Which affects all of our health. It's one of the worst things you can eat, and it's almost impossible to avoid. If you eat any processed food, you're going to be eating seed oil.
Let's take a look at the second one.
President Trump was cooking at McDonald's the other day and giving people French fries. And people criticized me, and they said, well, you know, he's out there giving fast food. And I said, I don't have anything against fast food. I'm against food that has seed oils. When I was a kid, McDonald's was made with tallow fat. That was good for you. Your body needs that. It makes you healthy. Why aren't we making it with tallow fat again?
McDonald's fried in beef tallow until 1990 or so, when they switched to vegetable oil because of a lot of public pressure from saturated fat from the beef tallow at the time. So he's partially right about the beef tallow and the seed oil, but the seed oils like corn oil, soybean oil, etc., these are found in processed foods and they are subsidized. But it's claimed that beef tallow is good for you. Now, this is blatantly incorrect. Beef tallow is 50% saturated fat. Any cardiologist, cardiovascular guideline, cardiovascular society recommends avoiding or cutting back saturated fat intake. Why? Because saturated fat increases the risk of heart attacks and strokes. A simple Google search will show you various societal guidelines and papers that recommend abstaining from or cutting back from saturated fat intake. There are numerous studies showing that replacing animal fats or dairy fats with seed oils reduces the risk of people dying prematurely, reduces people dying early, and increasing the intake of animal fats leads to people dying prematurely and heart disease. Now, his other claim was that seed oils are one of the most unhealthy ingredients and result in body-wide inflammation. First, regarding seed oils being the most unhealthy, we see that the more butter you eat, the more likely you are to die earlier. In contrast, people consuming high intake of plant seed oils were 16% less likely to die during the study period. They had less risk of cancer, less risk of heart disease. What about inflammation? There is no evidence that plant seed oils increase inflammation within the body. So I don't know where this claim is coming from. We see in this paper from 2021 that soybean oil consumption does not affect inflammatory markers, nor does it increase oxidative stress. All right, we've talked about what people are putting into their mouths. Now let's talk about people actually taping their mouths shut. Let's look at this.
It's the latest social media trend, taping your mouth shut to get a better night's sleep. But some doctors are sounding the alarm.
It's the latest wellness craze.
You will have the best sleep of your entire life.
Putting tape on your mouth for a better night's sleep.
It works. I just tape it shut.
Oscar winner turned lifestyle guru Gwyneth Paltrow calls it the single best wellness tool I have found recently.
I'm obsessed with it.
32-year-old mom of 3 Lindsay Polidor swears by it, saying it's a game changer.
When I sleep, my lips just gently separate, and my husband would make fun of me because I would breathe through my mouth. And so I learned about the benefits, how it can help improve sleep.
Doctors say there can be some positive effects of breathing through the nose instead of the mouth, including better sleep, lowering blood pressure, filtering out allergens, and decreasing anxiety. But ear, nose, and throat doctor Eric Voigt says anyone considering mouth taping should know the risks.
It could end up being an emergency situation. A lot of things happen in our sleep, including the need to perhaps take a deep breath or gasp. If we're building up carbon dioxide in our body, we need to expel that. That's why we yawn. That's why we will sometimes take a deep breath in. So you do not want to block your mouth.
This is stupid. So these are pure anecdotal claims without any real scientific backing. So I looked into this. Is there any useful research about people taping their mouths shut leading to positive sleep outcomes or any positive impact on health? And there isn't much. This review evaluated 10 studies which looked into different forms of oral occlusion in the setting of sleep apnea or mouth breathing. 2 out of the 10 studies showed any significant improvement in sleep metrics. But importantly, none of the studies tested mouth taping alone as the modality to improve sleep. I agree with the physician at the end. There's a real risk of asphyxiation or choking if you have some baseline nasal obstruction already, and now during your sleep, you're taping your mouth shut, so you're unable to gasp for air or anything like that if needed. So this trend is tomfoolery and potentially dangerous. If you think you have a sleep disorder, then you should consult with a sleep specialist. All right, so from a topic where we have a lack of evidence to a topic where we have robust data, and that's GLP-1 medications. GLP-1 medications like Wegovy, Ozempic, Mounjaro, Zepbound, and so forth. Let's take a look at the clip.
And I would love to ask Dr. Dakotas and Dr. Kaplan this question. Do you inform your patients before you prescribe them these GLP-1 receptor agonists? Do you tell them, hey, you've got GLP-1 receptors in your testicles, your ovaries, your thyroid, your kidneys, and we have no idea what the long-term damage will be done by artificially activating those receptors? Do you give that informed consent?
Dr. Kaplan, why don't you start?
We absolutely talk about those cells, those receptors in the thyroid, which is why the rats that they were testing these medications on originally were developing medullary thyroid cancer, but that has not translated over into humans. A healthy human thyroid does not have those receptors on there. So those are black box warning on those medications.
That's not a lie. There's a black box warning.
Medication, but there's a black box warning. That is accurate, but that's not saying that we've seen that in humans. We've seen medullary thyroid cancer in humans, but it's extraordinarily rare.
You're downplaying the black box warning that the FDA requires.
Have been used in America.
Sir, you're downplaying the black box warning, just to be clear.
And then in humans, I am playing down the black box warning because it hasn't been shown in humans. All of the studies that have been done in humans, they have not found these medications leading to medullary thyroid cancer. They were found in rats when they were originally testing them. That is a fact. None of the clinical trials that have been done by Novo Nordisk or Eli Lilly have shown medullary thyroid cancer occurring in humans. It is a risk.
And I certainly wouldn't prescribe to someone that has a history of it. Warning from the FDA.
But hang on. Let me ask Dr. Hang on a sec. Dr. Dakotas, Dr. Berry brings up risks we don't know about, right? I want to try and make this a little simpler, which is that the potential risks that exist here for specific reasons, and there have been reasons to be concerned about it. Are you concerned about the potential side effects of these drugs?
Well, the long-term effects, you've had these drugs now for about 11 or 12 years. And we haven't seen any major problems. He's talking about medullary carcinoma of the thyroid, and there's something else called multiple endocrine adenomatosis. Very, very, very rare. So with any drug, you have to say, do the risks outweigh the benefits? And that is not the case here. And a lot of these side effects that Jillian was talking about, most of the side effects occur when patients are not hydrated and they're not being monitored properly, okay? So when patients are really adequately hydrated, we don't see constipation, we don't see nausea. People get used to the drug. That's why in my practice, we titrate it up, and I use Wegovy, I use Ozempic, I use tirzepatide. All of these drugs need to be tapered up. You get the person into the fat-burning zone, and the key here is getting that body fat down. No one has talked about that here today. That is how these drugs work. They should work, if they're used properly, Dan, by getting the body fat percentage down. When we do that, people get healthy. Then they can exercise. And I'm not saying they shouldn't exercise if they're taking the drug, but then they're going to get much more benefit from exercising and eating well. But before we get rid of that horrific insulin resistance, that's why so many people can't lose weight on their own. Then we get the positive effects. But we have to monitor the body composition. Yeah. And that's what I do in my practice.
Jillian, 30 seconds, then everyone's going to get a final thought in the next break, all right? Yeah.
Number one, I sent you over 50 studies this morning.
I understand, but Jillian, just sending studies isn't the answer, okay? Just the bottom line is there are a lot of studies that talk about how no, I know, but just saying I sent you 50 studies isn't useful.
I sent you 18 studies on pancreatitis. On thyroid, that's a total lie. There was a safety signal out of France, and here, really, you deny. This is why there's a black box warning. Ready for this meta-analysis?
I'm not. Here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to get in. I'm not going to sit here with papers and listen to what studies, because people can make arguments about studies and the effectiveness. I'm taking macro here.
In a study. Ready? Are you ready for macro?
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. There was a systemic review and a meta-analysis of 64 studies. In 26, there was at least one case of thyroid cancer.
And here's why you can't just take that in a sound. But you're asking like this, right, Jillian? As if there's no argument on the other side, right? Doctor, what's the argument on the other side?
Again, we said it. Do the risks outweigh the benefits? And the answer is definitely not. When we reduce the body fat cell population, we get much less inflammation in the body.
So this is my point. My point is that it's simply not as simple and as soundbitey as a lot of people want this to be. And just saying, well, there's a study that says this. Oh my God, there's a study. Oh, well, so much over.
So this had more than 2.6 million views. So one of the panelists is claiming that we have GLP-1 receptors in ovaries, kidneys, GI tract, thyroid, etc. And we don't know what the long-term side effects or implications of these medications will be. This is partially true. We do have GLP-1 receptors in the GI tract, thyroid, kidneys, etc. But we have been using GLP-1 medications since 2005. That's more than 20 years of data, more than 20 years of post-marketing surveillance regarding safety. Another claim that was made in this video was regarding the risk of thyroid cancer. And yes, there is a black box warning with these medications about the increased risk of thyroid cancer, but that data comes from rodents. This meta-analysis of 48 studies found no significant increase in thyroid cancer in humans. Another study, this multinational meta-analysis, including patients from Canada, Denmark, Norway, Asia, etc., also did not find an increased risk of thyroid cancer in humans. Now, while they panic over the potential theoretical risk of thyroid cancer, this is how GLP-1 medications affect your heart. The SELECT trial was a major landmark study published in 2023. It showed that Wegovy reduces heart attacks and strokes by 20% across a patient population of 17,000. And this is in people without diabetes. It was because of this study that FDA approved Wegovy to be used in obese patients with heart disease, because these medications are cardioprotective. So yes, they have a beneficial effect in terms of heart disease, in terms of heart attacks. That's it for today. If there's a health claim or trend you want me to fact check next, let me know in the comments below. If you found this helpful, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. If you enjoyed this video, check out my evidence-based breakdown of 5 heart healthy habits video. I'll put it up here. See you in the next one.